What's up, SVS family? We're back for another virtual audiophile happy hour with, of course, the Larry Magoo. Larry, how's it going?
It is going great, sir. I hope everybody out there is doing well. Thank you for asking.
My pleasure. And of course, Gary. And Gary, would you like to open us up and share some comments? I know we have a very special guest today that we're excited about, and so are the commenters already. So why don't you open us up with some thoughts here, and we'll get rolling.
Hey, everybody. So happy to be doing this highlight of my week. It always is. Love and greetings to everybody in the SVS community. As we always do when we kick this off, we know we're in the middle of a global pandemic, lockdown. Some folks have lost jobs. Some folks have even lost loved ones. And I hope everyone's okay. And this is not about, in any way, shape, or form, ignoring or disregarding whatever hardship people are going through, but more about just all of us being together. As we always say, just there's nothing I treasure more, and I know Larry and Nick feel the same way, than being together with our community. So
Absolutely.
Hey to everybody, thanks for joining us.
Very well said, as always, Gary. And just for anyone who may be joining for the first time this evening, basically what we do, we try to answer some questions from the crowd. We have a special guest, and we'll be doing 4 giveaways this evening, chosen at random. And I have to give a shout out to Vince, who's behind the scenes on the SVS team, helping with the randomly choosing of the winners. And Larry, do you know what we're giving away today? I sent you the list.
Yes, I do. You sent me a list of 4 items, and those 4 items include a pair of Prime wireless powered speakers, an SB1000 subwoofer, a pair of Prime bookshelf speakers, and then to top it all off, at the end of the night, we're going to give away another SB2000 Pro subwoofer. So we have 4 amazing giveaways for 4 of our amazing fans and partners that are out there tonight. So we got a lot going on.
So we just give the giveaways at random to commenters. So keep the comments coming, right. And trust me, we are reading the comments. And
that's right.
Yes, whoever wrote that, they went by so fast. Caps hockey tonight. This is it. This is either the last day of the hockey season or we have a reprieve for 2 more days.
Lots of playoff sports, which it doesn't feel like playoff sports, but they're happening.
It feels weird.
Just sort of takes things away.
How cool is it to be able to turn your TV on and have 8 hours of NBA playoff basketball in one day, but not just one, every day for 5 days? I think that's amazing.
Well, this is actually a perfect segue into what we typically like to begin our happy hours with, which is what we've been watching and listening to. And I made the admission on the last broadcast that I was almost brought to tears by the Little Mermaid broadcast. So I thought, our Little Mermaid soundtrack. So I thought I would have to, even things out this week. So I've been trying to listen to a little bit more heavy metal, and I introduced my 16-year-old to Five Finger Death Punch. He's not quite into it as much as I think I thought he would be, but it did certainly bring me back full circle into some of my passion for music. I also listened to quite a bit of punk this week with NoFX and Rancid, who are 2 of my old favorites. And I've been getting into Lovecraft. It's only the first episode, but highly recommended there. Lovecraft on HBO, really kind of cool, spooky drama that I thought was really interesting. But Larry, what have you been entertaining yourself with?
I've been all over the map with stuff. A lot of NBA. Got to see the Mavericks and the Clippers series. My wife and I have been watching season 2 of Umbrella Academy. Then I just got into HBO Max. I was like, I'll just start the Batman movies again, and started streaming Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Even watched Blade, and then a lot of 80s music. So that's kind of where I've been living the last few days. Oh yeah.
And I noticed you. It looks like you got a little younger since the last time we saw you here on the broadcast.
Yeah, I joked last time that if I shave, I look like a 13-year-old chubby kid. So here we go. I just, what was it? Not this Monday, but last, just got up and shaved off my beard, and not for any reason in particular. And now my 10-year-old can't look at me without kind of wigging out. So
the Transformers Masters of Disguise shirt's definitely giving you some there you go.
So
some air of sophistication there. Yes. Gary, what you been getting into the past couple of weeks?
Well, I'm all up to season 5 in my rewatching journey of Sopranos. That's been fun. That's an amazing show. I watched the movie on HBO Max that Seth Rogen just dropped, which is called American Pickle, and that was good. It was entertaining and had some stuff to try to teach us, I guess. I have been listening to old Miles Davis, which I guess all Miles Davis music is now old at this point. But I found one that I hadn't listened to in a while, and I totally recommend it, especially if you have a high-res streaming service or a good vinyl pressing. It's called A Tribute to Jack Johnson. It's one of his not that well-known albums, but my goodness, it sounded so good streaming with Qobuz. So shout out to Qobuz. They really made it sound great. That was really good. I think that's and I have to admit, I'm still listening to Taylor Swift's Folklore. That thing is really a phenomenal accomplishment that she did.
I think that's the third broadcast in a row you've plugged Taylor Swift there, so it's becoming
I'm
a
a
theme
big
now.
fan of it. I just think it's really good work, brilliant work.
Well, it's been playing in our house too.
Were there any more like Lifetime or Freeform movies you've been watching?
I also, you know what, Larry? I got into I found how to watch it. The Paramount TV series called Yellowstone. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Costner.
I'm not. I think the plot is kind of simplistic, so don't get mad at me if there are fans on this. But these beautiful shots of wherever they do it. Maybe they do it in Montana. It's supposed to be set in Montana. Yeah. It's just absolutely beautiful. It looks really good on a high-end TV. So that's been. I've enjoyed that too.
And that kind of role is just made for Kevin Costner. He is just built for that kind of
he does
cowboy
great.
sort of thing. So I think it's a perfect casting for that. And before we get into the news from the weekend, I did want to say we are building another playlist. Some of you may remember a couple of weeks back, we wanted to know what your favorite demo tracks are for, showing off the system. And this we're tweaking a little bit, and this was Larry's idea. So Larry, maybe I'll let you present what this playlist is going to be all about. And we'll be watching your comments come through and building another Spotify playlist based on your suggestions. But Larry, what are we asking for this week?
Well, what we're looking for is a playlist of music that the second you hear it, you crank it. The whole Spinal Tap, take it to 11. What are the songs that when you hear, you immediately like, oh, that's my jam, and just crank it? And I know we all have quite a few, and my neighbors know when I'm in a zone because this room gets loud. And I've got quite a few. I've got a few playlists that are that way for me, and we're looking to see what you guys have to add to a list that we're going to start as of today.
And do you have any suggestions?
So, well, recently it's been a whole lot of music scores. In particular, John Murphy did Sunshine. Nobody knows that one, but it's my favorite piece right behind some Hans Zimmer stuff. But you guys saw me wear a shirt a couple weeks ago for the band Flickerstick. They entire album that they have, all three, I listened to those pretty loud. But with my 80s jams recently, and this is going to be a throwback to any of you that remember the movie Rad from the 80s. Real Life had a song called Send Me an Angel, and I've been hearing that one quite a bit recently and just been getting loud and stupid. So
there you go.
All the other stuff you guys know me for, but I want to get obscure.
I didn't think we'd have a Rad reference on tonight's broadcast, but I'm glad that we do, because that is the greatest BMX bike movie of all time.
Yes.
And there's not much competition, but it's a
my
great
bar, though.
Get one in there too. My wife's been listening to Judah and the Lion, and she said there's a song she loves called Suit and Jacket, and I hear her playing it all the time. So if you're looking for something new, she finds some good stuff too.
Well, I thought long and hard about this topic, and I wanted to go back sort of a little bit. And one of the songs that I always loved to crank when I was, younger is I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. I just always heard that song. It was like something about it just got me energized. So that is one. There's another song called Heavy Cross by Gossip. I love the female vocalist cranking those songs. So if you get a chance to listen to Heavy Cross by Gossip, it's just a great sort of ballad from a female vocalist that's phenomenal. And then more into the grunge era, Negative Creep by Nirvana. That is one of my all-time favorite blast it to your ears bleed songs. So, maybe a little bit distortion heavy as far as music goes, but I love it, and that's what I like to crank. So who's going to hate on that? And Gary, I know you were blasting Miles Davis earlier this week.
I really was playing it loud, by the way, but I'll give you, I did think about this question. I'm going to give you a couple. If you know me and you've been on any of our events or shows, I'm going to say one of them, which is I just absolutely love cranking Tool's Fear Inoculum. Mm-hmm. It's extremely well recorded, and it sounds amazing in high resolution. So that to me is just absolutely awesome to play loud. Then I thought of a couple of concert believe it or not, DVDs. They're pre-Blu-ray DVDs that I think are so awesome that even though the sound of Dolby Digital isn't state-of-the-art in the present day, I'm going to recommend them without reservation to anyone who likes heavy rock. So the first one is Red Hot Chili Peppers Live at Slane Castle, which is just an absolutely wonderful concert from their By the Way tour. And then 9 Inch Nails and All That Could Have Been, which is also a DVD, not a Blu-ray, when they were touring on their double album, which is called The Fragile. And it's absolutely astonishing to watch, I think. So those are two that I play so loud that even though I live in a single family home in a pretty, you guys have both been there, pretty large yard, neighbors complain, but it's worth it.
Well, with your Prime Wireless gear, you could have all like 4 of your systems going at once and really disturb the peace if you wanted to there. So
if I really wanted to cause trouble.
Yeah. Well, those are great suggestions, and I'm seeing a lot of love for Tool, a lot of love for some of the bands that we mentioned there. So keep them coming. We'll make a couple of other references before the end of the broadcast.
Somebody even called out I saw somebody call out a Sesame Street song, so I think we're gonna have to make sure we.
We might have to limit the list here a little bit. But before we get to the big news and our guest, we do have to do a giveaway. And our first giveaway this evening, as Larry mentioned, is an SVS Prime Wireless powered speaker system. And our winner is from YouTube, and it is Mr. Jason Osborne from YouTube. You are the proud owner of the Prime Wireless.
Congratulations. We need to do 2, don't we, before we call on Sandy?
Well, I'll do the next one after we had some news this weekend, Gary, and I thought maybe we could just share.
Oh, I forgot about that.
We try not to go and go off on our own tangents here, but I thought this was worthy of mentioning before we got to the guest and into what everyone I think is waiting for. So why don't you give people a little clue as to what I'm talking about?
Yeah, thanks. I am really proud of this. We always say, and this is proof because we're going to have an audio legend from a company not SVS in just a few minutes, Sandy Gross. But I am so proud of these awards. There is an award from the, make sure I say it correctly, Nick, Expert Imaging Science
and Sound Association.
And Sound Association. And what it is 55 Audiophile magazines.
61 now. They just
61. Okay, great. Breaking news. Yeah, I know. 61 Audiophile magazines all over the world. It includes here in the U.S. Stereophile and Sound and Vision. This is the creme de la creme of audio magazines, and it's. I mean, to me, it's analogous to the Oscars in our world. Now, 4 years ago, we won our first ISO award for the 16 Ultra series, and I was so thrilled about that because it was the first time we'd ever won, and it's such an incredible validation of the hard work that our design and engineering team does. Then for the second year in a row, we won for 4000 series, and then the third year in a row, we won for 3000 series. It had never even been done 2 years in a row by any company, and now I'm proud to announce that this year, for the fourth year in a row, our SB 2000 Pro subwoofer won the ISO award. So 62 magazines voting that it was the best subwoofer of this year. Now that is really exciting, but something that has never been done by any company. Our Prime Pinnacle speakers also won the ISO award. It's the first time in history of this award that the same company has won for the best speakers, no other speakers won, and the best subwoofer in the same year. So I couldn't be prouder. I'm just absolutely thrilled. We work really, really hard to have excellent products, and it just means so much that they get recognition all over the world. And I'm talking too much. We said we were all going to talk about this.
No, this was awesome.
I couldn't stop myself.
There's some levity here, and I wanted you to go ahead, Larry.
I was going to say, we've been wanting to talk about this because you told us a couple weeks ago, we have meetings over Zoom, which I'm sure all of you are. And Gary told us this. And I know all of you have seen Smith, our lead designer, on this. And I just watched Smith and this just emotion and excitement come over him. And it was so awesome to see because he had no idea. So to see that was really cool. And we all just kind of were taken back by it. So we're stoked for this. And
we were all applauding Smith.
Yeah. awesome.
Prime Pinnacle with Smith's
I
project.
just saw him
Yep.
throw his arms up in excitement and smile.
was excited.
And he was giddy.
So we're super proud of that. We have some information on our site if you want to learn more. There's a Facebook post about it, but just the fact that it was sort of done in a historic making way with best loudspeaker and best subwoofer, and having some of the US magazines involved as well as all the international folks. For a company from Youngstown, it just means a lot to us. So super happy for that. But before we get to our guest, because I think people are very interested to hear from him, we're going to do one more giveaway. And this one will be for the SB1000 subwoofer. And our winner this time is from Facebook. And it is Mr. Randall Crowley from Facebook. You are the owner of an SB1000 subwoofer. Congratulations, Randall. Vince will be reaching out to get your info.
Way to go, buddy.
So with that said, I think it's time now that we bring on our guest, which I've seen a lot of comments who are, people anticipating this. And I don't think I can do an introduction justice. He's a personal friend of yours, Gary. So I'm going to add Sandy Gross to the screen here. And why don't you talk a little bit about why we decided to have Sandy on and give him a proper intro.
Well, first of all, I really want to thank our guest, Sandy Gross, for joining our broadcast. Sandy is someone who I've known about 30 years. There's probably no one in our audio space that I admire more than Sandy Gross. He is a serial entrepreneur. He's going to be modest about this, but I will tell you, he was the man behind the success of Polk loudspeakers. He then left Polk and started Definitive Technology and turned that into a phenomenal success story. And then left Definitive Technology and started Golden Ear, and that has been a phenomenal success story. When he recently left Golden Ear, before whatever the next thing he's going to do is, I did call Sandy and say, would you be willing to come on? And I want to make it really totally clear to everybody. Sandy is my dear friend and someone who I just couldn't admire more. He has zero affiliation with SVS, other than that Sandy and all of us appreciate great sound, and he's just being a kind person to join our broadcast. So Sandy, thank you so much for doing it, and welcome.
Thank you.
For anyone who's sorry, go ahead. Anyone who's commenting that Sandy is joining SVS, don't believe those commenters. We're all passionate here. We're talking about audio. We're just having fun, and
you can't afford Sandy.
Yes, just a bunch of audio guys coming together to talk about audio.
That's right. So don't read too far into things, folks. But Sandy, it is a happy hour, and I switched up from my normal bourbon. I'm having a Moscow Mule. What are you imbibing upon this evening?
Well, right now I am biting upon Spindrift. Spindrift is basically seltzer with a little real fruit juice in it. And
don't drive after you've had 2 of those, Sandy.
Well, a little later after this, I'll have my cocktail, which will be vodka martini.
And I've already seen some comments come through that people are very interested to know what you're listening to, and we'll get to some demo tracks later on. But in terms of the current environment, I know there's been some unique experiences that you've treated yourself to in terms of audio. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what I've been really getting into, for some reason, I wasn't fully aware of just what's going on in terms of streaming concerts, on YouTube or otherwise. But with the whole pandemic scene, it's gone crazy. So, Ann and I have gotten very much into watching live jazz, maybe almost every evening. We have, Village Vanguard Live. We have SF Jazz here in Baltimore. We have a thing called On Dime Music that's doing live streaming. Smoke Live. We have jazz. There's so much jazz. It's incredible. And then I just happened to, I guess it was after listening to jazz at Lincoln Center, which was going through YouTube. I never quite realized what was going on with YouTube. So I went up on YouTube looking to see what Pharoah Sanders, who happens to be a real favorite of mine, might be available in terms of concerts. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. There's like a dozen live Pharoah Sanders concerts. Plus, the first one I looked at was something called Mezzo, Mezzo, which is a French company that does very high quality, live performances in all genres, not just jazz, but classical, opera, dance, whatever, MEZZO. And this is something, again, it's a golden time to go and watch live music online. It's taking me away from my normal serious 2-channel listening.
Is that on a YouTube? I forget. Yeah, I know you mentioned this when we were chit-chatting before. Is that on the YouTube platform, or is it its own platform?
I think Mezzo is its own platform. There are a bunch of Mezzo recordings of events that are on YouTube, but I think the live Mezzo performances are coming through Mezzo, I think.
I'm gonna check this out. I'm gonna look forward to looking.
Yeah, I was noodling around. There's a lot of great content on there that we should check out. And Sandy, you have a bit of a reputation, as does SVS, of when you're doing demos at trade shows and public environments, of maybe getting a little bit loud. And I'm interested to know what your favorite tracks are when you hear to immediately crank it to 11 in terms of, those demo songs that you really just like to rock out to.
Well, one of those would be The Doors, Morrison doing Ship of Fools. And just a little story to go along with that. Every year, not this year because we're not traveling, but every year in August, we go out to Monterey for Car Week. And it's always a lot of fun. It's an inundation for, car guys and girls. So one year I was driving, we're approaching Monterey, and I put on Ship of Fools on the player in the car and turned it up really loud and started to rock out on it. And that turned out to be dangerous because it really got me into a certain mood. And when we left Monterey that year, I had bought a 32 Ford Hot Rod. So, anyway.
Funny how that works sometimes.
Yeah. Also, I just mentioned a track that people may not be familiar with, which is very interesting. It's by Gordon Goodwin's Big Fat Band, and that's PHAT, Life in the Bubble. And that's a very, very hard-hitting demo track that my friend Barry O'Brien from Performance Audio out in San Francisco turned me on to. So that's something really special, too.
All right. I hope you're getting all those suggestions, Vince. We've got a playlist building here, so let's make sure we include all those. So you mentioned the Monterey Car Show, and that probably wasn't your first dabbling with cars. And I think there's a bit of a story behind what got you into high-performance audio that has a sort of automotive hook towards it. So can you share us a little bit about what sort of brought you to the world of high-performance audio?
Sure. Well, when I was a teenager in high school, I got into I was a professional slot car racer, not stock car racer, slot car racer. And I don't know how many of you folks remember these things, but there were these big tracks all over the country. Every town that had more than 20,000 people had a big slot car track. It was a major, I guess, a fad. And, the cars went in the track, you had controllers and you raced them. And I ended up working for a company called American Rusket, which was a company out in California that built these sorts of products. American Rusket also sponsored a lot of, they sponsored, for instance, the Porsche racing team. I just saw a picture today, 1968, I think, with Scooter Patrick and the Porsches. So anyway, they hired me, and I had a friend of mine. We were the Gold Dust Twins, and I wound the motors, I designed the chassis. You saw a picture of one of them. And I thought that when I went to college, I went to Johns Hopkins, I thought that I wanted to major in engineering. Well, I discovered when I got to Hopkins that engineering was, in my words, more like theoretical physics. Basically, it was a lot of math, and that wasn't what I was interested in. So I changed my major to social and behavioral science. This was 1968 to 72. I listened to a lot of music. I got very involved in audio, just in general. I hadn't really been involved in audio until I went to college. And what I started doing actually was I started buying equipment, and you went to the Sunday classifieds. And at that point in time, 69, 70, 71, everybody was getting rid of their old tube equipment to get the new, high-end transistorized solid state gear. So you had all this fantastic classic Marantz 9s, 8Bs, 10Bs, Macintosh 60s, 30s, 275s that were showing up on the, in the Sunday classifieds. And I bought them and I listened and I sold them, and I just got more and more into audio. And then I had a couple friends of mine from college, Matt Polk and George Klopfer, who were kind of getting involved in the same time. And they built a friend of mine, Gene Nagler, put me together with them, and they built a pair of tannoy. I had a pair of tannoy 10-inch drivers that they built cabinets for that I used as part of my system in my room at college. And that kind of put me together with Matt and George. And then I graduated. They graduated the year before. I was trained to do nothing, and we started Polk Audio. So it's kind of the way that went. It was a lot of
fun. We're gonna get a little bit more into speaker design philosophy and some of those aspects, because I know you're a bit of a visionary when it comes to that. But your personal system right now is something that I think a lot of people.
I'm seeing more comments. Everyone wants to see your system, Sandy.
So I think now would be a good time. Do you want to show your electronics first, or would you like to show sort of your quadraphonic boundary reinforced system here? Because there's going to be some questions I think that people are going to have based on that. But I'm just going to flash this on screen, and why don't you tell us a little bit of what's going on with your personal system at home currently?
Sure. Why don't we show the full system first? So to give you an idea what's going on here, and it's interesting because when I started to talk about before my room at college with the tannoy 10-inch drivers, I had tannoy 15-inch and acoustic labyrinths, which are basically transmission lines in the front. I had Mac 60s driving them Mac 30s. And back around 1970, there was something called quadraphonic. And they had come up with the concept of encoding rear channel material into the LP grooves and decoding it. And so I had a little electro voice decoder, which basically mainly was pulling out ambient information that was playing into the rear channels. And that was, something I was doing in college. And then I had an opportunity to listen to a pair of KLH-9 full range electrostats, blew me away. Tannoys went out the door, KLH-9s. And then what's happening here is I'm sort of revisiting that concept in a very high-end way. If you look at the picture in the front are my, this is my reference system. I feel that a loudspeaker designer needs a reference loudspeaker beyond what it is that they create, because if you don't know where you're trying to go, I've never made the world's best speakers, but I think my reference speakers, from my perspective, are the world's best, and this is kind of where I want to go in terms of sound quality. So this is a giant pair of SoundLab. These are the Ultimate 845s. This is a 400-pound each full range electrostatic speaker. It's an amazing, amazing thing.
It was a bit of an effort to get them in there too, was it not?
Yes, they're in steel frames, and I purchased them, and it took me a year and a half to get the courage to have them shipped, because I knew there were going to be problems. And yes, there were problems. When they showed up, I had 6 friends there. No, I had a moving crew of people actually that bring these into the house, and the trucking company didn't show up the first day. The second day they showed up, and the bottom, one of them had busted through the crate and was like going like this as they kind of took it around into my rear, into the rear door. Anyway, luckily they weren't damaged, I think because of the steel frames. So my group of friends and I took them out and, set them up, and everything was good. It was a little heart-wrenching, but everything turned out to be okay. So what's going on? Just back to the picture, because I'm gonna.
I'll put it back on here.
Yeah. So what's going on here is, years ago I bought an audio research piece of electronics called an SDP-1. SDP-1 was Audio Research's attempt to address high-end home theater. It's failed miserably. But what it was an ambience retrieval device. So basically, at line level, it pulled out a left minus right, right minus left signal, sort of the old Hafler Dynaquad signal, but at line level, and it has an adjustable digital delay line. I set it up years ago. I didn't understand how to set it up. didn't work well. But a couple weeks ago, I got a wild hair and I decided, let me try it again. So I had in my back room this pair of quad 989s, which is another full range electrostat, not up to quite the Sound Lab, but it's something cool in and of itself. I set this whole system up. I have an Atmosphere OTL amp in the back. You'll see some of the stuff in the front when we show the next. Anyway, this is a high-end 2-channel system with ambience retrieval. When it's properly set up, you're not aware of any sound coming from the rear speakers. When you're listening, if you turn and listen to the rear speakers looking for sound, you don't hear anything. But it adds an ambient quality that just makes the sound come alive in a way I've never heard before in a home system. I'm shocked, and I haven't really gotten into fully tweaking it yet. So it's something very, very special. My description of it is, you know, normally listening with the Sound Labs, which again I think is the best speaker on earth, I feel as though I'm listening into the room that the music is being performed in. The music is like the wall disappears in front, and I'm listening into the room. But with the SDP-1, I feel like I'm in the room that the music is being performed in. It's really something. Here we have a picture of some of the rest of the gear. On the bottom is the SDP-1. On the top right is a major, now I'm listening to vinyl a lot again, and that is an acoustic signature Ascona turntable with a Kuzma 14-inch arm and a Lyra Etna cartridge. And this is, again, something, you know, it's beyond. We have MSB digital gear. There's a PS Audio preamp, and we've also got down in the lower left there, it's called a Lino. It's a Channel D phono preamp, which is a current sourced unit. This is something that's becoming trendy now, current sourced phono preamps in the real high end. And you'll see this becoming more and more popular. You know, there's a high-end piece by CH that's got current sourcing that the real tweaky people at the extreme with $80,000 phono preamps are really into. So I got this recently. I think it's really quite special. And the amps are the PS Audio BHK amps. And on the lower right, behind the PS Audio amp, you'll see on the floor, which I also, you know, move in and out of the system, a pair of Atmosphere OTL MA1 tube amps.
I think you're giving a lot of
about your painting too.
Yes, the painting there, that's a Milton Resnick. Milton Resnick was a first-generation abstract expressionist painter. He was a good friend of de Kooning's. Now, a lot of people consider him second generation because he didn't have his first show until the mid-50s, but in fact, he was painting with de Kooning back in the late 40s. Just to give you a little perspective on Milton Resnick, and we collect Abex paintings, there's a story. There's a picture that's called The Irascibles that ran in Life magazine, and I think it ran in 1950 or 51, and it pictures 20 painters that were abstract expressionist painters that they got together for this picture. And the painters that were in that picture, that being in that picture helped made their careers. Well, the story is that Milton was walking down the street with de Kooning to go to the photo shoot where he was supposed to be. They got to the door, de Kooning turns in, Milton keeps walking. De Kooning says, "Milton, this is where the shoot is." And Milton says, "Screw it." And he just continues to walk on. Anyway, that's a Milton Resnick 1959.
Can I interrupt you just, Sandy, just to make an observation, you know, in case anyone's wondering how you are you're obviously a serial entrepreneur. That's from a business place, but you started 3 different super successful speaker companies. If anyone wants to doubt where that came from, listen to the passion in your voice for great sound. It's just wonderful to hear. It makes me want to come over, except I can't.
Yeah.
So
someday.
You actually don't live that far from me, as you know. But it is what it is. But I feel your passion. I feel like going downstairs right now and listening to 2-channel. But it's just great. it's infectious, which is a
well,
bad word to use right now.
No, I appreciate it. In this system, I mean, I am getting so much enjoyment out of listening. I mean, I have been getting a lot of enjoyment, but this upgrade that I made with the ambience retrieval just puts it into a whole nother world. It's very, very.
And just to say, what I'm hearing is it's totally pristine in front of you, and then what's creating this sense of ambience is almost it's almost undetectable, but there it is, creating that sense of presence and ambience. But in front of you is a completely pristine signal. And
the ambience combines with the front. So part of the way, when you look into the technology of this whole thing, there's something like, I don't know if it's the precedence effect or the Haas effect, but it says if there's less than 25 milliseconds of delay between the two signals, you don't hear the second signal as a separate signal. You hear it in combination with the front signal.
Right.
So the signal, the ambience coming from the rear, really just gives better sound to the front stage. You know, the front stage becomes more three-dimensional.
And because I think I would draw a distinction between that and some of you actually brought it up when we were sort of chit-chatting about this a few days ago. You're drawing a very sharp contrast with the fake concert hall kind of things that some receivers do. This is very different than that, right?
Yeah, it's very different than that. It's not a fake concert hall sort of thing. You know, when they came out with the digital surround stuff, they had all these settings for, stadium, concert hall, all this stuff, and they all sounded horrible. Now, I want to mention something though. In the tweaky, real, super high-end kind of world, like the system I think that I'm dealing with here, we don't have a decoder that relates to the front channels. However, there's something about Dolby Atmos which almost nobody knows. And when I speak to people about it, I'm shocked at how little understanding and knowledge there is about it. But there's a setting on the Dolby Atmos I think it's called Dolby Surround. And the main concept of the Dolby Surround setting was to enable you to play 5.1 Blu-rays and have it derive the same sort of retrieve height information off the Blu-rays and play it through the complete system, your complete Atmos system. However, it does an amazing job with two-channel music. And I discovered this, when we set up at several of the shows. We had a very complete high-end Atmos system, pretty high-end, but we used a Marantz decoder, or recently we were using some higher-end decoders. And when I listened to the two-channel music demo stuff and went into that mode, it sounded fantastic. It reminded me of listening to my reference system. And an interesting little anecdote related. I mean, I talked to John Atkinson, of Stereophile, and I mentioned this, and he said, he never thought of it. He wasn't aware of that. I had a conversation with Brent Butterworth, another writer, in the last week, and I mentioned it to him, and he wasn't really aware of it. It's something people just are not aware of.
It's so awesome you can discover these kind of things, like, even now after all the knowledge you've acquired. And I see a lot of comments that people want to know about, having been involved with all these huge brands, like about your philosophy, like how much of speaker design is really about passion and, sort of your personal endeavor versus, the engineering side of it and the knowledge side of it. Like, where is the cross section there, and what has always been your philosophy in terms of speaker design?
Well, I'm gonna just finish my anecdote now.
Oh, sure. Yep.
In the anecdote's interesting. So one year at CES, I was so into it. At CD, I had 5 engineers from Dolby come around, sit and listen. And I started pitching them on it, because I didn't know how aware the people from Dolby were actually, what it did with two-channel music. And one of them said to me, Sandy, you'll be very interested to know that the group of 5 engineers sitting in your room right now are the engineering group responsible for what you're talking about. I thought that was interesting.
Full circle.
Anyway, so, in terms of speaker design, I mean, I am not the engineer. I am the concept person. But much more than, it's not a simplistic concept thing. I mean, having done this for 50 years, I know speakers. I know speakers pretty well. I understand the technologies. I understand how the stuff all comes together. But what I've done with all three companies really is to kind of lay out a product concept for a particular product. And I would sketch it mainly, I'd sketch it on a yellow pad of paper. It would relate to the shape. It would relate to the driver complement. It would relate to the technologies that were going to be incorporated. And I'd work with, recently in, Golden Ear, I'd work with my industrial design guy going back and forth to come up with what this thing was going to look like. And then it would go to the engineering group who would take my dream and my concept and turn it into reality. So, in terms of the passion, I mean, passion is important in anything that you do. And certainly in designing speakers, creating speakers, you need a tremendous passion. I think it's been very fortuitous that I've had the kind of background and understanding and the love of what we're trying to do here, in combination with an engineering group that was really very, very highly talented, that could take the dream and turn it into reality. People ask me, when we were talking about doing what we're doing here, somebody said, what is the most exciting thing about designing speakers? And what I find is very exciting is, again, I love coming up with the concepts, and I love, have the concept in my mind. If we were magicians, we would have the concept and go, and then there it would be. However, the way it works is you have the concept, you start in the process, and then a year or 2 years later, boom, there it is. So it's something that you had in your mind actually has turned into reality. And that's very, very exciting.
It's very satisfying, right? To go from ideation to a real product that's in the marketplace being, welcomed, I guess, and enjoyed.
Absolutely.
So when you're doing that sort of like, though getting towards the final listen of a speaker, like what are you listening for? Is there like an aha moment where it's like, it's baked, like this is it? Like what are you actually listening for to understand and to realize like we've got there, like this is the final version, we don't have to do anything else? Like how does that moment come to be?
Well, I think, it's actually very complex. And part of the thing is, there is no perfect loudspeaker. And, the loudspeaker is the most imperfect part of the whole chain. So a lot of it comes down to, what it's like an artist, what is the designer, the team looking to accomplish? Where do we want to be? And when people ask me about loudspeakers and what is the most important thing, or how do you determine if one loudspeaker is better than the other, a lot of it, when you get down to it from a personal standpoint, everybody has all their hot buttons, all the things that are most important to them in terms of a loudspeaker's performance, and everybody's are different. So, to one the best story, I have an interesting, years ago when we were starting Polk Audio and we had the Polk Model 9, which was, we called it the Controlled Dispersion Array. And it was a little tower, and it was kind of, it was sort of trying to do something like Bose was doing in a slightly more sophisticated manner. And I was at a show in New Orleans where we had these set up, and we were playing, one of the highlights at the show was when the Clemson marching band, who were staying at the same hotel we had the show happening, came marching in the room, and they set up in front of where the speakers were playing, and they started dancing or whatever it is they did. That was really great. But my point was, we also had in that room a pair of quad, the 57 electrostats, which are still today considered to be one of the most incredible speakers. And I remember people coming in, and we demonstrate the quads and we demonstrate the Model 9, and they'd laugh at the quad and they'd say, boy, that's ridiculous. Listen to how much better the Model 9 sounds. Well, not to my ear at that point or ever. So, this is part of what we do. So, what is the aha moment? I don't know that there is a moment. I think there's a lot of work that goes into listening to the speakers with all kinds of program material. And the other thing that you run into too, which even at this point in time, a lot of people don't realize is the huge variability in the program material. You know, it's.
I'm glad you brought that up because I know you have a list of some sample tracks that, we did a playlist a couple of weeks ago about some of our favorite demo tracks. And I know you have some reference tracks that maybe some people would be interested in hearing about because I know, certain songs challenge speakers in different ways. So I'd be very interested, and I think the rest of the people would be as well, to hear, some of your suggestions there.
Yeah, I'll just quickly read through one of my demo lists. John Gulliu Nomis, that's from Pictures in an Exhibition. He's an organist. Beach Boys in My Room. This particular cut, I'll mention, the Beach Boys in My Room, was Michael Fremer sent it to me. It was something he recorded off of a 45 RPM, recording of the Beach Boys. And it sounds unbelievable when you consider just how fantastic they were in putting this together back in the 60s. And then Brian Wilson, This Beautiful Day. Brian Wilson, I think, is an incredible genius. This Beautiful Day is his most recent album, and it's Brian Wilson. What can you say? And I know when I read the reviews of this, and I love Brian Wilson, I'm reading the reviews and people saying, gee, it sounds like the Beach Boys. Duh.
Shocking.
Of course it does. This is, Dave Grusin, the prologue from West Side Story. Dean Martin, If You Were the Only Girl in the World. Enya, Loxie and Gates. Empire Brass, Hopper Dance. I don't know that you're ever going to find this, but it's out there. Buster Williams, a bass player, Nomads. That Gordon Goodwin's Big Fat Band I mentioned. Lindsay, but here's another great cut. Lindsey Buckingham, All My Sorrows. This dates back, I think it's late 90s. It's off one of his albums. And this is something, somebody came around at a show, a listener, and wanted me to play it to see how it sounded. I never heard this cut. I was totally, absolutely blown away. And the guy gave me his demo disc, which I then copied onto what I'm doing here because it's so good. There's something, it's called the Heinrich Friedschneider Band.
Can you spell that? No, just kidding. You don't have to, no.
Dirk Sengata drum solo. This is an amazing drum solo. So Heinrich Friedschneider Band. Sonny Rollins, I'm an Old Cow Hand.
Mm-hmm.
Anna Karam, this was David Chesky's, who's a good friend, his first Anna Karam recording, which he did with all tube electronics. And, I argue with David. I tell him, David, this is the best Anna Karam recording. And he said, no, it's not. Da-da-da-da-da. I said, yes, it is. But it's what I use, when people ask to hear a female vocal, I always put the Anna Karam on because it's fantastic. So anyway,
those are some really good
deep
great track suggestions.
Well,
yeah, and I think
I love your list.
People are taking notes there. And before we let you go, I am really curious, being the visionary you have been in the audio industry for the last 50 years or so, I mean, what do you see as the future of high performance audio in terms of where we are now and where we might be in 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, this is a good question. How does it relate to home theater? I think this whole, pandemic and lockdown is having some effect in terms of, what people are doing and looking for. I think, are people going to go back to movie theaters? Well, I don't know. I think we're seeing from talking to the, the dealers and the integrators, we're seeing people put more focus on home theaters at this point in time. So, I think this is going to become more and more important. And then there's kind of a battle between this is good enough and just how good can you make it, right? I think that's a good description of what's going on. You have a lot of this is good enough with people listening. We have people listening to more recorded music now, by an order of magnitude than ever before, yet most of them have never heard it on anything approaching a real hi-fi system. And then on the other hand, we have the tweaky high-end going off into space somewhere, with $100,000 and $150,000 preamps. And I can appreciate that to a large degree because I'm kind of into it, but I don't know that I'm into a $100,000 preamp. I can afford it, but I'd rather, next week I think I'm taking delivery of my new C8 Corvette. I'd rather buy a C8 Corvette than $100,000 preamp.
That's a small house here in Texas.
I don't blame you for that one. Well, I mean, I would love if you would share that list with us. I think if you could email it to me, we'll post it. So a lot of people were asking. I want to get that list from Sandy. So if you could send that over to us, we'll share it out. It's been a phenomenal conversation. I think the best comment I saw was Sandy knows more about audio than I could learn in 100 years if I lived, till I was 130. So, I mean, just a true wealth of information. We greatly appreciate you coming on and what you've contributed to this industry. I mean, it's just it's an awesome thing. So again, thank you so much for being a guest here.
My pleasure. And remember, the more you know, if you understand things, the more you know how much you don't know.
Boy, is that true.
That is the ultimate. So thank you again. And, maybe someday we'll have you back, but we appreciate your time tonight.
Sure. It was fun.
Thank you, Sandy.
Take care.
Thanks, Sandy. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Wow.
That was fun.
Man, that was
absolutely.
My head is spinning just with all the knowledge shared there. So
my wife
that was
sent me
really
a
cool.
text, and so my wife Andrea sent me a text. Is there going to be a quiz after this because of all the stuff?
Well, we're due for a giveaway, and I think the only thing better than having Sandy Gross drop knowledge is to give away a pair of Prime bookshelf speakers. And this time we're going to Facebook, and our winner is Mr. Anthony Perez from Facebook. Congratulations, you are the proud owner of a pair of Prime bookshelf speakers.
Yay,
Our man Vince will reach out to you.
Congratulations.
We haven't really gotten to many questions that we've gotten from previous episodes, so I think now might be a time.
I want to say, Nick, there's so many great questions in the comments, and just be aware it wasn't for nothing. We're gonna absolutely look at these in the next few days. We'll have another show 2 weeks from today. Is that right?
That is right.
2 weeks from today, we'll have looked through the comments. So if you've asked, I saw several really good questions that I probably wouldn't have done to Sandy, but we will definitely look at for future shows and the very next show.
Yeah, we scroll through the comments. We like to pick the best questions, and that's sort of what feeds the next episode. So that will be September 3rd when we do our next one. But I think this next question obviously focuses on a trend that I think has been growing in the world of audio, for better or for worse. And the question is, what is the most noticeable difference when you upgrade from a soundbar to a 2.1 or a 5.1? And Larry, I think I'd like to hear your opinion on this one first, and just sort of paint a picture of what that upgrade sounds like, I guess.
Well, it's kind of funny. We did a training with a dealer in Utah, kind of going through that last summer, and we talked about going from TV audio to a soundbar, and then from soundbar progressing into a full sound system. And most soundbars, people just get to make their TV louder. There aren't a whole lot of immersive soundbars coming out there. There are some, but really what it is it's just typically to make things a little bit louder and make a little bit more of effect in the room. But when you do go to a true properly set up 5.1 or 7.1 or 5.2.2, all that stuff we talked about last time, you're in it. You're part of what you're watching. You're immersed. Like when you go to a movie theater, the dialogue is crisper. You have occasions where one of my favorite things to do whenever I was watching stuff at home with my dad is he'd turn to figure out what that was that happened behind them. And you don't get that from a soundbar. You don't get that lifelike experience. And having speakers around you in a surround setup, it completely elevates the experience all the way around. It's more enjoyable, sounds better, there's real bass, better dialogue, and you have more flexibility and control over what you can do as well. So it's kind of like going from VHS to DVD. It's kind of the same jump there.
So Gary, I know you have a bit of a hobby of bringing sound bars in to just sort of see how good they're getting. And, you've told us about, the latest and greatest that come out there. So I'm interested in your opinion on, I guess how far they've come and is there potential for them to ever match a true 2.1 or 5.1 experience?
So I'm glad you brought this question to our show, Nick. I've been thinking about it a lot because a soundbar is and I don't think people think of it this way. A soundbar is a very pure decision on the part of the person getting it. A soundbar, 100% of the reason and 100% of the people getting a soundbar are doing it because they want better sound than the sound their TV does. That's the only reason anyone gets a soundbar. And so I think it's a phenomenally positive thing that soundbars are so popular because the person is basically voting in favor of great sound. And come on, let's face facts. It's a gateway drug for, as you say, 2.1 system, which introduces real speakers and a real subwoofer. So that's a massive upgrade. And as Larry says, a 5.1 or a 7.1 or even a 5.1.2, we talked about this last time, so I won't redefine it. A way to really bring to that person a totally immersive experience. And I want to bring Sandy's point back, which is, I think, really important. One thing that I share with Sandy that I think some of the audio industry doesn't always sign on for is most people, I would say 2/3 of people on this planet love great sound. And I think sometimes the audio industry thinks that the vast majority of people don't care about great sound. Only the ones who can invest this massive amounts of money, as Sandy said, are the ones who care about great sound. Actually, I think if you bring great sound to a normal person with a normal job and you give them an opportunity to get it, they're going to jump on that and they're going to love it and it's going to enhance their life. That said, I have to say that most of the sound bars I played with, and I've probably played with in my own home, 30 sound bars, have another one coming in the next 2 days. I'm always playing. I'm not even an addict. I want to understand whether we can bring really great sound to a normal person via the sound bar.
That's not
one of these days. I think most of the sound bars fall short, but not all of them. And most importantly, I think they get people to understand that great sound really enhances the experience, and it can only get better from a sound bar.
Yeah, and the technology has shifted a lot too. We've seen sound bars now that are $2,000 and $3,000, and I kind of look at that and I was like, there's some cool technology inside them, but for the cost of a $2,000 to $3,000 sound bar, you can buy a full 5-speaker system, a subwoofer, a receiver, and have your local install guy come out and wire it all up for you too.
Yeah, I agree, Larry. I don't think a sound bar that costs $2,000 makes a whole lot of sense. And I will say, maybe I'm playing my cards a little bit. We look very carefully at this, and one of these days, when we figure out how to bring a sound bar that has really great sound that doesn't disappoint in any way, you will see an SVS sound bar.
Well, we're getting towards the top of the hour, so I think we'll save our center channel conversation for next week. We have one more giveaway to do, and I did want to throw out one more call for the songs that you like to crank it to 11 as soon as you hear them. We're building a playlist. I know we were coming fast and furious early on, but as we wrap up here, throw us some more tracks that you love. As soon as you hear them, you just want to crank it up, and we'll be building a Spotify playlist based on that. We'll share out the link on the next broadcast. And on that note, the next broadcast will be Thursday, September 3rd, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 weeks from today. We'll have some more surprises, as we normally do, more giveaways, more fun.
Maybe another special guest?
I would think so. And so we'll make all those announcements here in the coming weeks. And for our final giveaway of the night, we're giving away our ISA, the award-winning SB2000 Pro, as voted on by 61 of the top audio magazines in the world, giving away the SB2000 Pro subwoofer. And our winner is from Facebook, Mr. Gary Jackson. Congratulations, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
Another Gary. So there you go.
Great first name.
That's right. Taking home the big prize tonight, our ISA award-winning SB2000 Pro subwoofer. So again, check us out 2 Thursdays from now, September 3rd, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap for the evening?
I don't think any cranked playlist would be complete without a little safety dance from Men Without Hats. So
thank you.
You're on that.
Larry, you're doing the whole show with that. I'm sorry.
Is that how we want to end things? Okay. Well,
do we really want to end on a tin note like that? Hey, I just want to say, I don't know if Sandy's still listening, but I was just thrilled that Sandy joined, and it just, we have more, all the different companies that make great sound in different ways from different products and platforms. We all have a bit of a sense of community and camaraderie, because we all love great sound. And hopefully we're bringing to our community, to all you guys making all these wonderful comments, great sound into your lives too. Thanks,
We're
everybody.
all fighting for the same thing, and we appreciate having Sandy on today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll check you guys back here in a couple weeks. Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.